Welcome to the Decentralized Opportunity Podcast. I'm your host, Tanner Lytle, here with your other host,
Wyatt Carson. Tanner, I know you know this, but for the sake of the podcast, I'm going to say this: I might be the most excited for today's episode than I have been in a long time. We're 61 episodes today. Congratulations, by the way, Tanner. But today we have a special guest, in my opinion. Not only do we have a successful business owner right here from Nebraska, but this man has been one of my best friends throughout my time in the Army. We deployed together. We were overseas every single day together. And he now lives in Lincoln, Nebraska with his wonderful family. And he's also the owner of Stratum Productions. I would like to introduce Dan Anderson.
Thanks for the great introduction. Happy to be here. Looking forward to a great conversation.
Great. So Dan, let's start off the bat. Tell us a little bit about yourself before we get into Stratum and how you got to where you are today. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Absolutely. Nebraska raised kid, grew up in Western Nebraska, really found a love for live music and entertainment in high school. Albeit I skipped probably more classes than I attended in high school to go check out a rock show in Denver or whatever it may be. So, really fell in love with things there as far as the entertainment, live music, things like that. Graduated high school, realized I was probably not going anywhere quickly. Decided to enlist in the military, try to figure out a good balance there. Ended up staying in the military for about 14 years. Through that time, gained a lot of experience, gained a lot of knowledge, was able to see a little bit of the world, make some great relationships with people. But I also knew that probably wasn't going to be the end-all be-all, and really knew that entrepreneurship was a path that I wanted to take. So kind of started to venture down what that might look like, about 10 years ago at this point. So I guess a little bit of everything there. I'm probably the worst person to talk about myself, so I'll admit that up front. Pretty humble human being. I don't like to talk about myself that much, but that's a good overview, I guess.
Awesome. Can you kind of talk about what caused you to want to start Stratum? Like, when did you see a deficiency in the market, and why do you feel like, okay, I can start this company? What do you solve, and what makes you different? So you thought, hey, I can make a career out of this.
Absolutely. I think our story is a little bit different, right? So a little over 8 years ago, my wife and I were expecting our second child. And through some unfortunate things that happened, he ended up being born and passed away shortly after that, which is certainly a tragedy in and of itself. But in my perspective, that's a really maybe a beautiful thing, right? Because that forced me to get outside of my comfort zone. And I realized at that point, kind of right after he had passed away, that I was not pursuing the things that I was put on this earth to pursue. I was not doing the things that I needed to do. And it was in that I kind of reignited my love for music, creating experiences for people. And I really, through some market research, I had a lot of friends in the live music scene. I'd seen a lot of bad production. I really dove headfirst into that without really knowing anything beyond what I knew at that point, right? I don't have any formal training. I don't have a college degree. I don't have any of those things, but I have a passion for helping people create experiences. And something I like to talk about a lot or tell my staff is usually the best view is when we turn around from front of house, which is where we mix. And you can see people just lost in an experience. And that's really what drives us still to this day.
Wow. That was beautifully said. So my first question I thought of, what am I going to ask Dan, is how the hell did you learn business? So 2015, I'm leaving the military. Last time I saw you and waved goodbye or whatever that may have been, I can't remember. But not once did I think, in 10 years, Dan's going to own a business that's successful with his own staff. And it's not that I thought anything negative of you, quite the opposite. It just, I never saw you as that kind of person. So you had this secret passion. How did you get to the point you are from the day you said, I'm going to start Stratum? And I know you had a different venture before that. How did you learn the skill sets to be successful in this?
Yeah, I think so. My family, fourth generation farmers in Western Nebraska. business was really kind of ingrained into me early on, right? I saw a lot of business opportunities present themselves. I saw a lot of business transactions. Actually, through high school, I was accepted into a lot of college programs that were entrepreneurship driven. I've always kind of had that drive, but much to your point, it was kind of maybe hidden a little bit, right? That goes back to the humble piece. Maybe just how I was raised. Maybe it was this mental battle I had of, okay, am I really good enough to do that? And really, I think that's something that a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with, no matter where they are in that journey, whether they're starting out or they've done it for 20 years, right? There's always a next level that could potentially lead to issues. So from that point, I mean, I really didn't have any other option, right? I just had to learn about business. So I took some college classes at a community college about business. YouTube University has been my best friend. I've just really studied successful people and tried to model what they've done. Maybe not mimic, but follow those same footsteps. I'm a firm believer. Again, I actually just talked to my 10-year-old son about this, that successful people leave clues for you, right? There's a path that will lead you to success at some point. It's just, are you willing to dedicate enough time to get to that same result? So that's probably a big portion of how I got started in the business piece of this.
So when you were starting out, what were some of the clues that, really helped you find success there at the beginning? And what were some of the pitfalls that you were unaware of kind of jumping into it?
I mean, I think one of the biggest clues is just being a good human being first, right? I
Mhm.
think that there's so many business owners out there that look at this as a transaction for money, and we don't really look at it that way. This is more of a relationship game. I actually just had a Zoom meeting with a client a couple of days ago, and they said the one thing that we love about you and your company specifically, Daniel, is that it's a long term vision. You're looking 10 years down the road, not this next event, right? We're always trying to plan and look at what's best for people, and we've done that since day one, right? Whatever that means. Also doing the right thing, right? We're going to make mistakes in business, right? We're going to try to remedy that, no matter what the cost is to us. We're going to do our very best to make sure that that happens. And some of those are the successes, like Andy Frisella, Ed Milet. There's a lot of entrepreneurs like that I followed along the way that have YouTube videos. Like it's really easy to follow, or excuse me, it's simple, not easy, to be able to follow those processes. And some pitfalls, man, it's harder than it looks, right? If I'm completely honest, and I knew it was going to be hard. Don't get me wrong, but I think it's a lot harder than I had imagined. I think the sacrifices I've personally had to make in front of my family, right? There's a lot of weeks gone. There's a lot of family time lost. There's a lot of anniversaries, birthdays, and things like that I'll never get back. But if we're mission driven, I think that absolutely is a cost worth compensating for in the long run.
That's great. So that you actually made an excellent segue to my next question for you, which is, how did you overcome that fear 10 years ago, or whenever you decided to launch Stratum, to dive headfirst and make this your full-time thing, go all in, um, you know put your family, not on hold, that's not what I'm trying to say, but put them on notice. Hey, dad's going to be busy for a while, and hey, sorry sweetie, but like, we might be strapped for a little while we work this thing out. How did you overcome that fear? Because that's one thing, I guess, and I'm asking this as a personal question. um, I have 4 kids of my own. I'm also married. My wife. The fear of just jumping off that edge is probably my biggest restraint from starting a business. Or I can talk on a podcast forever about businesses, but I haven't started one, because I think that's my biggest fear, is how do you take that ledge? How did that work out for you?
Yeah, I think the thing that I just ask myself is what if I don't do this, right? Um, you never know if you don't try, and I think some of the circumstances have driven that, right? With us losing our second son, Evan, I really had a new perspective on life, that life doesn't last forever. It's going to end at some point. And am I really going to be satisfied on my deathbed knowing that I didn't take that opportunity, right? Regret is probably one of the most painful things, in my opinion. We all carry regret. It's just part of those things. And this is just simply one of those things that I wasn't willing to let slide, I guess, right? Like there's so many things that we, as human beings, make a small compromise, and that compromise gets a little bit bigger and it gets a little bit bigger. And I really went into this with, what if I don't? And really, there's no compromise. There's no plan B. We have to go forward. Whatever that looks like, we're going to figure it out along the path.
I've been revisiting the book Mastery by Robert Greene. And in it, one of the areas that he talks about to seek mastery is to find your life's purpose. And, you're talking about through your hardships and stuff, really trying to evaluate yourself and find that what's meaningful. And that's one of the big things is, you may take detours or wrong things, but getting course corrected to get back on is what's actually worth doing. How is it that you chose live events, music, those things? Like, why is that? How did you come to the realization that this is what I want to move forward on compared to something else? Because we're often enticed by certain opportunities and different things, and we're like, yeah, this is totally me. I can be successful here. I can do those things, but it might be the wrong course. So, how did you go about finding that this is the path for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it was, man, 2005, and I was standing in, I think is now the Ball Arena in Denver, Colorado, at a tour back then called Taste of Chaos, right? And I remember stopping and looking. That might age me a little bit and be like, oh, he listens to that kind of music. But I remember stopping as I think I was a junior in high school, and I looked around, and everybody's problems were left at the door. The only thing that mattered in that moment was the people that you were with, the environment you were in, the experience you were really immersed in at that moment, right? And I think a big piece of that was I felt a little bit robbed having a child die of an experience of a lifetime. So the adjustment or the mental position that I took was, okay, how can I help other people create those experiences, right? Our mission statement at Stratum is that we really exist to create events and experiences that captivate audiences, communicate messages, and most importantly, connect human beings. Because I think that that's something that we all crave, is that connection. It's no maybe not mistake, but illusion that we all have problems, right? How can we create something that gets left at the door? You can go forget that for 4 hours, have an experience, and go home and talk about that for the rest of your life, right? I think that that's what really drove me to this. Was I really have a passion to create, but more importantly, I have a passion to help people connect and create a lifelong memory in just a couple of hours, really.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, so I want to switch gears a little bit. Tell me about the very first event that you got paid to do AV for. The very first one.
Probably not our finest work. Sometimes I look at that picture. I have it saved on my phone, and I visit it often because it's a good reference point on how far we've come. It was actually a wedding at Lawrence and Garden, and I remember committing to building this custom structure for these string lights over the dance floor, right? And I did it, but man, was that painful, right? And I think it might have been $700, right? But I probably put 80 hours, 90 hours into that, just myself. And then we had to pay other people in that. But we built basically this custom trellis system for them. And then we started out in kind of the wedding space and had a photo booth set up at it. So that was the first event. There were so many issues that popped up. Like the custom way we built it was with 4x4s, and the humidity had gone up, so they had swollen and they didn't fit in the stands that we built. So we're like behind Lawrence and Gardens trying to shave these things down with a handsaw. I mean, it was an absolute nightmare. I don't even know how we got that job. and I don't even know how we survived it, but we did. But that was the very first experience, and man, was it life altering. Let's say that.
Okay, same question, a little different.
Yeah.
What is the largest event you have done for AV?
We help with an event down in Miami that streams to a little over 1.4 million people. It's about 6,000 people in the room. So that's the biggest event we've done in that facet. Live event, kind of just all in one place, about 12,000 people is the biggest event that we've done. And I'll be honest, that used to terrify me. 3-4 years ago, right? But now you walk into an arena and it's not commonplace. Like, we're still grateful to be there, but just bring another level of confidence to that.
What is it that most people don't understand when it comes to live events and setting things up? Because I'll be honest, I go into it and you just kind of take all those pieces for granted. You see like the setups and the lights and those things, but I guess I never really took much time to think about behind the scenes what it really takes. So what pieces are those?
Yeah, you go to a tour for your favorite rock band down at an arena that started probably 18 months ago. So it's an 18-month evolution from kind of the concept to sourcing AV partners and suppliers to the design work to the choreographed pieces. Moving into that, then when you actually get on tour or into a big corporate event, it could be 30 semis, it could be 400 local crew, it could be 120 crew members that all have a specific job on that tour that travel with it. So there are a lot of pieces that go in with that. Sometimes I think it's crazy that we spend 12 hours setting up for a 2-hour show. But again, that's all part of this. It's really creating that space for people. So I think that's probably one of the biggest unknowns, right? When you walk out of that show, there's a group of people that are going to spend the next 5 or 6 hours taking that down to put it on a truck, to drive 300 miles, to start this all over again in 4 or 5 hours. And they do that for weeks on end.
I'm kind of just fascinated by the logistics of everything you say. So do you have like a warehouse full of like trellis and speakers and can lights? And yeah, this is, I don't know anything about AV, so just bear with me. But sounds like there's a heavy inventory lift for what you do, right?
Yeah, it's very capital intensive. And that's probably been one of the biggest hurdles for us to jump over. We're not in a prime location for live events, right? Nebraska is not known for hosting big conferences and concerts. There's no big festivals around here. So we've certainly had to do a significant amount of work, not convincing bankers, but going in and standing our case and giving them the actual metrics of why this can be successful. But we have about a 7,000 square foot warehouse full of equipment that ranges from a basic speaker that you could set up that you've seen at your local wedding, all the way up to line arrays and LED walls and all sorts of crazy stuff like that. So there is a lot of capital intensive pieces that go into this, right? Like Metallica's, a couple tours ago, I think it was $1 million a night is what the AV budget was for that. Wow. And when you actually kind of stop and think about the gravity of that, it's pretty unreal to think about, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, so to spin off that question, let's talk about capital a little bit.
Yeah.
Another big question with entrepreneurs is, how do I get the money to even do this? You started a capital-intensive physical inventory is necessary company. How did you, unless you, outside of being humble, you were also secretly rich, I wasn't aware of 10 years ago. How did you get to this point? How were you able to get the necessary funds to get off the ground?
Yeah, I think being able to leverage some of that veteran status was
Mm-hmm.
helpful. We definitely leaned on the SBA in a lot of ways to get started, get that capital going. And then we've just basically bootstrapped since that point. I mean, there's obviously other working capital loans and things like that we've taken out to continue to move forward and put the best gear possible on our clients' shows. But leveraging the SBA, building good relationships with local bankers has been absolutely crucial for us. The best time to start a relationship with a local banker is a year ago, in my opinion, because you never know what that ask is going to be. If an opportunity drops in your lap and, hey, I need $1 million loan to be able to execute this, and it could prove to be $3, $4, $5 million worth of revenue for the company, you have to have the vehicles to be able to accomplish those things. So just being smart financially has been another piece of this, and just maybe riding on a little bit of a prayer sometime.
So I see that you started your company back in 2017. Is that right?
Yeah. Yep.
So when it comes to owning a company or running a business, you adaptability, versatility, and ability to just handle what comes at you. My immediate thought, live events company started in 2017, but we're in 2024 now. The big elephant in the room is 2020.
Yeah.
How did you go and navigate those times where there was nothing but uncertainty and many, many things were closed down? Tell me and Wyatt and our audience here, like, what was that timeline like for you? What was your thought process? How did you go about those pieces? Because I can't think of anything bigger for your industry than that moment in time.
Yeah, and I think the other interesting point to this is I had just quit my full-time job in December of 2019.
Oh, well, perfect
So
timing.
it was impeccable, right? If I could do it all over again, I would absolutely not do that that way. But I in December 2019, I looked at what was coming down the pipeline. I was like, man, there's no way that I'm going to be able to dedicate my time in two spaces that I need to do this well. I was actually standing on top of a ladder. We were hanging some lights for the Heart Ball for the American Heart Association here in Lincoln. And I heard somebody come out of the kitchen and say, hey, there was a COVID case in Lincoln. And a week later, our life changed. I watched $600,000 worth of business basically evaporate in the matter of days, right? And going from a full-time job to now leaning solely on a business, I will never forget the day that I looked at our business bank account and we had like $580 in it, but we had like $4,000 worth of bills. And I was like, oh man, this is not this is not good, right? Like there was no other way to put that. But I remember sitting down with my wife at our table and saying, look, the only way to get through this is to be maneuverable, to adapt, to do the things that we need to do. We've built the company to be more like a speedboat versus a cruise ship, right? A cruise ship's going to take a long time as a corporation to slow down, turn, adjust, head in a new direction. We're pretty nimble. We were actually able to grow revenue through 2020, which is pretty, it's not a common theme through that for our industry, especially. Like there were some giant companies that are worth millions, if not billions of dollars that were on the verge of collapse, but they'd out leveraged themselves. So back to some maybe YouTube University and watching these successful people, like Warren Buffett, when the tide goes out, you're going to see who's standing there with no pants on, or whatever he says, right? Like that's basically, you're going to see who's out there skinny dipping. And we had kind of put ourselves in that position a little bit, but we were also nimble enough to adjust. We started doing a lot of outdoor movies. We started to do a lot of virtual events. Just really set ourselves up as an expert to continue to push forward through that and meet clients' needs wherever they landed on that event map.
If you could attribute the success of Stratum from 2017 to 2019 when you quit to go full time to 2024 and you're doing shows in Miami for 16,000 people, what's your special sauce? What was that two, three, fourth things that you think you and your company did that positioned you to be successful? I mean, you're 7 years into this business. Congratulations, buddy. That's amazing. But, I personally don't believe in dumb luck. So what did you do? that set yourself apart from someone else trying to start a similar business?
Yeah, I think we're just very transparent in a lot of ways. Like, hey, we may not know 100% about this, but we can help you solve this problem. We're not going to be perfect at it, but we're going to make it right. Right. I think transparency leads to a lot of trust. And in an industry that doesn't have a lot of trust, because there's a lot of companies out there that'll take you to the bank and just run. I think that was a big piece of it. I think leaning on Midwest values, right? As dumb, or maybe not dumb. That it's probably not dumb. It's more, people always talk about having Midwest values, but leaning on those values, and just being genuine with people, being upfront, being honest. And then there's something in the military, and I forget the training, but they always say hunt the good stuff, right? And for the sake of this podcast, I can't remember what that training is, but I always think about that, right? What are the good things that can come out of this? What are the good things that we can create for our clients? And then finally, I think the biggest thing is we always put our clients first, whatever that is, right? Their event, their mission is more important than us trying to overlay our mission on top of that. Whatever they're trying to accomplish is exactly what we need to be operating in, and nothing more, nothing less.
So I love that Midwest values plus your own personal brand of humility. Um, that's awesome. Instead of coming in saying, "We're the best. I got this. You don't need to explain this." I love that concept. Thank you.
Yeah.
To piggyback on that, you're talking about customer first, their thing. You've mentioned your company's mission. How do you stay on track with that? Because that's one of those things that's easy to talk about, but it's really hard to execute. So, what is it about over the past 7 years? Have you derailed on those things and and not had those? And what were those repercussions? Like, how is it that you try to stay that course?
Absolutely. I mean, we've made mistakes, right? And I think the first point in that is that we just go own that mistake with the client. Like, there's no honor in hiding something from a client, right? Because they're going to be able to see right through that, especially if it's different than, like, in a sales meeting, you talk about your mission and then you show up on site and it's totally different, right? They're going to see right through that and be like, okay, well, you don't actually operate by your mission. It's just some fancy words that are hanging on the wall in your office, which is not the case for us. So lots of mistakes have been made. And I think that a lot of the lesson of why we're so successful today have been out of those mistakes. We've just tried to not make the same mistake twice, right? I think as far as operating within that mission, it goes a lot into the quality of the people that we hire and that we put on events. It also goes into the quality of the client. Like, we have an onboarding process for these clients, and if they're not a good fit for us, we will absolutely go find a different solution or help them find a different provider that can help them reach their goals and their objectives, so that they see the biggest benefit for their live event.
So that's a big thing for a lot of companies, is identifying their ideal customer profile. What is your ideal profile? Because I guess there would be venues that are too big. There's some that are too small. And can you describe, was it just trial and error on how you found that, or how did you go about actually like picking that niche?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's been a lot of getting out there and just seeing what we like, what we don't like. And we found a lot of success in the corporate realm. We are targeting the corporate realm primarily. We also have seen a lot of success in managing venues. So we've got a handful of venues that we're the in-house AV provider for, which has been fun because it's a lot easier to go flip a switch and turn on a bunch of equipment than it is to load it in for 12 hours and then get to enjoy a show. But that's really been our trial and error. And I would say maybe 18 months ago, maybe a little bit more than that, we really realized that the margins weren't there in live events, like specifically live music. Even though we love that, and that's kind of our root, we understood that you can't run a successful business without making money, right? We all have to have margin. We all have to make money to be successful. And we found that if we just took a slight adjustment, took a lot of our expertise from that live music scene and apply it into the corporate realm, maybe polish it up a little bit to serve their needs a little bit better, that we could be far more successful in helping them accomplish their goals.
Do you find that the job still is fulfilling? Because I know, like, when you were starting, you're like, "Oh, I started at a rock festival. I want to do it at a rock festival." And, looking on the outside over a long span of time, you could think, well, now they're just doing corporate stuff. That's not as cool and fun. Like, how does that, how do you take that balance?
Yeah, I mean, it's way more fun to go walk into an arena and mix a rock show than it is to maybe listen to a panel for 6 hours on a stage. However, I've learned a lot from listening to the countless amount of keynotes. Right, I've had a privilege. A lot of the books that I've read, I've had the privilege of listening to them speak. Right, so just constantly being curious and trying to learn more about what drives those people has been a big piece of that fulfillment for me. And again, we're still serving the same point. If they're having let's say they're having a national sales meeting, right? They're still making impact. It's just a different impact, right? The lessons taught in that sales meeting may transform one person's life in there. That information that they have learned, they may be able to go out and legitimately sell more than anybody else in their company and provide a better lifestyle for their family and a better image for their company and all these things. So I think that that's been a lot of the driver. We still, with some of the venues we manage, we get to scratch the itch of live music from time to time, which helps us kind of balance it all out.
Yeah, I'm wired a bit differently. I would almost prefer all those keynotes and sales and panels
Yeah,
than a lot of concerts, though,
I mean,
too.
it's still really enjoyable to sit there and listen to, like Robert Greene. We had an opportunity last year, 2 years ago, to work an event where he spoke. I mean, that's a legend
Mm-hmm.
in the world of business, and it's really cool to be able to read their book and then listen to them live.
Yeah. So, for Stratum, how many employees do you have today, Dan?
Yeah, so full time, we operate on kind of a little bit of a different model than other people. We have 6 full time people, but we can pull anywhere from 60 to 100 part time or freelance employees at any moment. This is a very seasonal business. It doesn't make a lot of sense for overhead purposes to have 60 people sitting in a warehouse in December when there's no events, because that's obviously, as a business owner, you've got to continue to pay payroll, benefits, all those types of things. So we really have a core team that are experts at developing plans, management, those types of things. And then we really rely on part-time and freelance employees to come in and help us execute those shows.
How do you go about keeping that stable of freelancers and part-time people available? Because it's so hard now, especially today, to get a quality team workforce that you can rely on and really trust to execute the job. I imagine that it's pretty difficult, if someone only works a job a few times a year, that they're going to do, an amazing job every time. Like, how do you manage those things?
Yeah, I think it's been a lot of footwork up to this point on just going out and building relationship with people, and then under promising and over delivering on the opportunities that they're able to help with. Hey, the program is actually called Stratum Flex, and it's really, if you work full time but you love to help with events, we have flexible opportunities for you. Maybe that's 4 hours at a time. We ask that you only or that you're able to dedicate 4 hours. Right? It could be more, it could be less. So being able to go out and think of those creative ways. We're also the inefficient in this regard, right? And I think if there's any place to be inefficient in a business, it's with people. We're able to go in and really dedicate time and energy into building relationship with them. We host a handful of events every year where we get together with all those people. It's an open invite. We can go out to dinner. We can go do whatever it is, right? We really focus more on the relationship than the outcome they're able to provide. As far as quality control goes, I had a mentor tell me that employees will care less than a freelancer will, because the next event the employee is going to be at, the freelancer's next gig is only driven off of how good they did at the last one. So if they don't perform well on a show, they know that they're never going to get called back. So the expectation for them is much higher. In our experience, they've really carried themselves in a different manner, in a different capacity, because they know that their livelihood or Christmas money is relying on the next call that comes in.
For Stratum Flex, do you have it set up like through an app? Do you have like a group? How do you have that all set up to manage? Because again, it seems with that volume of people and how sporadic that work can be, it would be a lot of logistics going back to that to actually like get the people notified and getting them on time. How does that work?
Yeah, so we're actually transitioning this year to better serve our freelance and our part-time employee base to onto a platform that helps manage that. We're able to text them from that, create opportunities. They can put in their availability, so it's less back and forth. And we can just create opportunities for them. We can basically send out a broadcast message to them that says, hey, March 18th through the 20th, we have an event. Are you available or are you interested? And we can set pay rates in there. We can do everything. We can give them locations. That way, it's just an easier onboarding process for them. We have a lot of people who will actually take their 2 weeks of vacation to come work for us. So being able to effectively communicate to them through that app is going to be a huge win for us. In the past, we've not done it that well, in my opinion. It's been a lot of phone tag. It's been a lot of emails. However, what we've done through that's back to the inefficiency piece. We're able to build relationship and meet people where they're at, and they also can understand where we're at. Again, we've not done it perfect. There's always room for improvement on that. However, I don't want it to be the utilization of a tool like we're starting to use is great, because you can just send out an automated message, but that's not what we're built off of. We're built off of genuine human connection. And if we can continue to cultivate that even at that level, I think that's how we'll continue to attract great talent and people who care as much as we do on the job site.
Yeah, if there's so much efficiency, it becomes too surgical, too mechanical.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Interesting.
Okay. Quick fire round. Not really. Stratum. How'd you come up with the name Stratum?
Well, I think the first 5 names that I picked got denied by the state. So I was like, well, what the hell do I do now? And I think it was like 2:00 in the morning, because in the early days I would just work as late as possible. We'd actually just had our 3rd child, our daughter. So I was up till 2:00 in the morning with her, making sure she was doing well. And a strata is a layer, right? And this is what I started thinking about in maybe my sleep deprived state. And I never just wanted to be a provider of one area. I never just wanted to provide audio. I never just wanted to provide lighting or video or creative services. I wanted to be a one-stop solution, an end-to-end solution for people. And that's where Stratum came from, because we offer layers of production. It's not just one aspect of this. You're able to walk through our front door and we can go help you plan and execute a high level, high impact conference anywhere in the country at this point. And that's really what that came from, was sleep deprivation and a lot of denial.
That is hands down my favorite question to ask interviewers, because every question is not as cool as people would think.
That's right.
The way people name companies is much more in line with what you just said. I was sleep deprived feeding my daughter at 2 a.m. and related layers to business. I love it.
Yeah. Plus the domains available. That's usually a big one too.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So actually, that's a good point. I wanted a bit of a clarification. The state denied. What do you mean the state denied your first 4 or 5 business names?
So we went in and applied for LLCs. And at that point, I didn't know that you could go search what names were taken. Right.
Mm-hmm.
young, dumb person who wants to start a business, right? Uneducated in that realm. I was just like, cool, let's call it Elevated Productions. Let's call it whatever we want. And so I kept sending in these applications, and they're like, well, this name's already taken. And then I think it was the third or fourth one. Somebody actually called me from the state, and they're like, hey, you know that there's a website that you can actually like look to see what names are taken. I was like, oh, holy cow. Maybe I should look at that before I keep wasting time and money on sending in these applications just for you to send me a letter 2 weeks later saying it's denied.
That's amazing. I love that. So I'm on your website right now.
Yeah.
By the way, your website's beautiful. It's simple, but beautiful. Well done. I want to talk about your Blue Fox guarantee because of your website and my stalking of you. This is probably my favorite feature I have seen.
Yeah.
I love the concept. Can you explain your Blue Fox guarantee? And then I'm going to ask why Blue Fox.
Absolutely. So the Blue Fox guarantee is a 110% money back guarantee on a piece of equipment if it doesn't work for a show. Now, obviously, we are going to do our best to get that up and running for a show. However, it's one of those guarantees. It's a peace of mind, right? And we're also operating the Blue Fox guarantee as far as staffing goes. So the Blue Fox is actually something that our staff and freelancers can earn. And then that's a pin or a shirt that they're awarded. And it's something that we've really kind of built around an earned, not given mentality. And what that does is when you walk onto an arena floor, a ballroom floor, and you can see 15 people with a shirt that has a Blue Fox on it, that's a visual aid in knowing that there's experts on your show site. And that's really what that means is, okay, we're going to take the care to look at the equipment when it comes in, make sure it's in 100% working order before it goes out. Now, obviously, it bounces around in a truck, gets to a job site, and it doesn't work. We have spares and, again, qualified great people on site to repair those things. But that's really what the Blue Fox guarantee is built around, is that 110% money back guarantee that piece of equipment is going to work for your show, because we also understand that it's less of our brand and more of our client's brand that's on the line. And when an LED wall dies or a panel goes out, that's just as much their image as it is ours. So we take that very seriously.
Yeah. Beautiful. I love it.
So what is it coming into the future? This is what I'm curious about. What is it that maybe isn't obvious to someone on the outside, but as an insider, when it comes to live events, when it comes to these productions, what's something that is in the pipeline for the future that is going to maybe change the way things are going or evolve the way things are going or just be a really cool, impactful part of live events?
Yeah, I think first off, that's a really good question. The hard part to answer about that is that 2020 forced our industry, an otherwise stagnant industry, to grow so much that I'm not sure what the next big greatest thing is going to be, right? A lot of the virtual reality, extended reality in the live segment came from 2020, and it was just forced out of necessity. Like, hey, we can't build this huge set. Like The Mandalorian, for instance, was primarily shot in front of a giant LED wall in a 3D space, right? And they have graphic designers and visual designers that are building those scenic elements on that LED wall that interact with the camera as it moves around. So I think we'll continue to see more of that evolve. I think we're going to get more into a lot more holographic type things, which is going to be cool. I know that there's been some of that talk already. We visited a company called Market Scale in Dallas, and they actually have a holographic box from one of their Pro AV partners there. You can have a conversation with somebody, and it looks like they're standing right in front of you. So I think a lot more of that connectivity is going to come about. I honestly think right now people are still just so concerned, so careful about getting in the room with other people that they don't care about what happens around them. As long as they're in the room having an experience with other people, it doesn't matter the avenue or the method. So there's a lot to be seen, and it'll be interesting kind of how the industry plays out over the next 10 years, because we're actually anticipated to be one of the fastest growing markets. I mean, I think we're supposed to double in revenue in Pro AV nationwide in the next 5 years. So it's going to be interesting to see how people continue to rely and lean on Pro AV in daily life.
Is that growth because of people's, again, hunger to get out there and experience things that aren't virtually?
I think it is that piece of it. I also think that the cost of technology down into a consumer level is starting to decline, right? Like a digital console is a great example of that. I don't know if you're familiar with something called, it's the Behringer X32, right? It was a digital console that came out 10 or 15 years ago that cost $3,000. Well, that kind of revolutionized our industry, because before that it was $90,000 to get a digital console. So as we start to see costs start to adjust and evolve, I think more people are going to be able to see that they too can participate in this in a different avenue. And maybe you want to go start a DJ business or an AV company. Well, now $10,000, I can go do that and host great events for other people.
I 100% was hoping you were going to say holograms, by the way.
Well, it's always interesting. Like, you could watch Coachella, you watch these big music festivals, and there's going to be teasers in there on what's to come, because they like to push the envelope with a lot of that. So my wife makes fun of me, but I'll sit in my house and live stream Coachella for the weekends that it is, or Ultra Miami, because you're going to see something that's interesting that comes out, like the holographic imagery that's able to come out on LED walls. Eric Prydz is a DJ, but it looks like the hand is coming out of the LED wall. It's things like that that are going to continue to be more commonplace, I think, in our industry.
Yeah, CES is going on right now at the time we're filming this, and there's quite a few of those holographic boxes where it's just a guy standing in front of a camera, and then it looks like legitimately that he's standing within that window. Or another piece of really cool tech, I saw that they just have started having glass OLED screens that you can see through, but
Oh,
it has
interesting.
really, opaque, strong color vibrancies in the non-transparent parts. And so I could see that as well, where you have virtual people or virtual graphics really interacting in different layers throughout a presentation or things. It'd be really cool.
Yeah, and LDI, which is a lighting convention in Las Vegas held every year. Martin is a lighting company. They just announced a moving headlight that I think it weighs 8 pounds, which for a moving headlight, I mean, some of those things are 200-300 pounds. So to come out with a light that compete on the same level at 9 pounds is pretty revolutionary. So smaller, more compact, more efficient. It'll be interesting to see how that continues to evolve as well.
Perfect. Well, speaking of evolving, we're getting to that point of the interview, Dan, where I like to ask, 7 years in, you've done amazing work. You're doing some awesome things, man. What's next for Stratum? Where's Stratum going in a year or two?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're going to continue to focus on the foundational things that have gotten us to this point. I would not be surprised if you start to see other locations start to pop up. That way we can be a closer reference point for and service provider in a lot more of those event hotspots that our clients seem to be traveling for or to host their conferences or conventions. And we'll continue to evolve. I would love to get into the touring game on a bigger level at some point down the road, and maybe that's sooner rather than later, but continuing to grow. I am honestly committed. I would really love this to turn into $100 million, a $200 million company and stay rooted in the Midwest, because I think we're strategically located coast to coast, but I also believe that we get overlooked in a lot of ways, right? I wrote a blog maybe 2 years ago that was called Corn, Cows, and Creatives, right? When you talk about Nebraska, there's not a lot of people that think about creatives, yet it's a really rich environment for a lot of film, a lot of production, a lot of those pieces. So I think moving down the road, we're going to, and myself personally, continue to push on the envelope of highlighting what's actually possible out of the Midwest, and that you don't have to be in a Las Vegas or a Phoenix or an Atlanta or a Dallas to be really successful and impactful in this industry.
That's the core message of our podcast. Like straight up, it's you don't have to be in Silicon Valley, you don't have to be in New York or Miami or like you said, Las Vegas. You can do it in a small town in Nebraska. You can do it, in Lincoln, you can do it in Omaha. It's really decentralized now, and that's the whole point with the power of the internet and technology. You have so much more leverage than you would have ever had at any other point in time in history. It's pretty remarkable.
Absolutely.
Well, all right, Dan. So where can people find you if they want to follow or maybe ask you some questions, or where can they find Stratum if they're interested in your services?
Absolutely. So stratumpro.com is our website. Stratum Pro Events is our Instagram handle. And an actual throwback to the military days, my Instagram handle is Stratum Actual. So people can follow me on Instagram there. Not super active as far as posting goes, but if people have a question, happy to be able to answer that. We're also launching an online platform for event planners, marketing officers, those types of people who plan events to really gain knowledge. We're going to call that Stratum All Access. So if they follow us on Instagram or keep an eye on our website, there'll be more information for that to have more access to us as an event expert in their space.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Dan. It's been fantastic to get to meet you, and I really hear your story and all the things that you're doing. It's absolutely incredible. And then we'd like to thank everyone who's listened to the end. So we have lots of fun stuff happening. Do please like, share this episode, or make sure to listen to any prior ones that you have missed. I'm talking specifically to my wife, who is quite a few behind right now.
Wink, wink, nudge,
Yeah.
nudge.
But yeah, we thank everyone who watched or listened. We will see you all next week. Bye bye.